Ladies and gentlemen, it's lovely to see so many familiar faces in the house tonight. For those who don't know I'm James Burridge, and I love this place as much as you all do. But we also have a familiar face to everyone around the United Kingdom and around the world in sailing. And Ben, it's so lovely to have you with us here in Sea View tonight. You've taken the rib over. Stunning day for it. I mean, you really nailed the weather, so well done on that score. But when you do come here, what does the island, what does this beautiful stretch of water behind us mean to you?
Oh, well, thanks, James, and really nice to be back at the club. And like you say, we've had some great memories of living here for a number of years, and just yeah, I think getting the rib across, like you say, is a beautiful afternoon, evening, isn't it? And just some great memories of messing around in a rib and CV1 designs and mermaids, and also we've done a lot of racing off here. And you mentioned SailGP with the America's Cup World Series off Portsmouth, and then up in Cowes as well with SailGP, and round the island races, and just so many great memories of sailing around the island.
The last 12 months has been so unbelievably intense for you. I'm sure you'll probably say that actually it's not just the last year, it's been a decade. I'm fascinated, first of all, to know what you relish about that intensity and what it takes out of you.
Yeah, it's America's Cup in particular is a pretty brutal event, and people, obviously focus on the racing at the end of it, but it's clearly it's 3-4 years of development, designing, building test boats, then eventual race boat, trying to get those boats up to speed. And I think you saw, what's the last America's Cup. We started off a little bit slowly as we were trying to get to grips with a new boat, obviously a new concept of design, and managed to, over the period of 4 or 5 weeks, really rinse a lot of extra performance out of the boat. And those periods are particularly intense. And then there's a lot of shenanigans and politics that goes on around the America's Cup. So part of the reason why everyone loves it.
I bet. I'm sure you do. But there is a determination about you as well, which we've all witnessed for over a decade now, whether it was winning gold at the Olympics or in that boat, in that incredible AC-75, the way you've raced it. If we were lucky enough to be on board with you, what is the real Ben Ainslie like? How does that determination manifest itself? What would we really see?
You don't really want to know the answer to that question. I don't know. You'd have to ask the people I sail with. I think they would say over the years I've definitely mellowed a lot. When I came out of being a single-handed sailor to sailing within a team, it really took me a while to understand the dynamics of different individuals and working off those individuals within a team dynamic. And so 20 years later, hopefully by the time we got to the last America's Cup, I was slightly better at it. But it's a learning process, and I think that's the great thing about the sport of sailing that we all love so much. Is it's so dynamic, isn't it? There's so many types of boats. There's all of the different great sailing venues around the world, and then when you get to a boat like the AC-75 and the America's Cup, again, just the technology and the teamwork, not just on the water but off the water, that's required to really maximize the performance of the boat and the whole team is pretty amazing when that starts going well, and to be a part of that.
I remember we were watching back in 2013 when you pulled off one of the most astonishing comebacks in sport, let alone in sailing, with Team Oracle. And you went into that team, into a losing team, into a team which was really short on confidence. I think all of us here would love to know, when we're trying to sail the mermaids, not quite the same thing, I completely get that. But decision-making is still a big art form. And you went into that team and you managed to turn a losing team into a winning team. So what are the first few things you do to try and reinstill some confidence?
Well, in that instance, you're right. We were 8-1 down. I think when I got on the team, we were -1. We started on -2 points, which you don't really need to go into that. And the Kiwis were on 4 points, so we're already on the back foot. and the confidence was down, and then you could see the communication on the boat was really breaking down. People just weren't saying anything. And so first and foremost was just about bringing some positivity back into the thing and getting some confidence, get people talking, particularly at the back of the boat with Jimmy Spithill and Tom Slingsby, two real phenomenal talents. So between the three of us getting that communication going, and then the rest of the boat could sort of thrive off that, really. And it was an incredible experience to be part of that. And, people talk about it a lot still now. And it was, because being 8-1 down, really, no one thought we had a cat and hell's chance, really, putting that back. And we did, and it was a real privilege to be a part of that, and a big moment in the America's Cup history.
Absolutely. It was an amazing achievement. But when you're making those decisions, how do you know they're the right decisions? Because it was a last chance saloon big time, wasn't it?
Well, you don't. I mean, you're still making mistakes. It's about making less mistakes in the other boat, really, isn't it? And that's the same in any sport. And we rode our luck. I think there was one race where the Kiwis were about 30 seconds from crossing the finish line, and it got timed out. And we had some amazing moments. I'm not sure that many people know that about half an hour before the winner takes all final race, we broke the wing spar. We didn't think we were going to be able to race. We hoisted one of the shore crew aloft, and he basically stuck the wing back together with some pretty high level super glue, and very very technical, the America's Cup, and we got him off the boat about 2 minutes before the start of the race, and so the jeopardy was just massive. But it's about taking your chances, communication, never giving up, all of those sort of key things that you hear about sport. I mean, it's, you name it, had everything, that America's Cup.
Yeah. Fast forward 10 years on, and you have spearheaded the British Challenge. And I've heard you talk about this elsewhere, about leadership isn't always about, well, it's easy leading when you're winning. But actually, when things are going wrong, when you're suffering setbacks, I remember when your test boat nearly sank, and you were really worried about the impact it was having on the team's morale. So how do you pick up a team's morale? How do you lead when things aren't going according to plan?
Well, it's easy to say after the point, but try not to panic first and foremost is a good start, because if you start panicking, then God only knows what's going to happen to the rest of the team. And that was a really, really full-on moment. You mentioned that when we pretty much sank our test boat, and at one moment we had it upside down, sinking, and it was on fire simultaneously, which is definitely a first for me and the rest of the team. So it was not a good moment, and it took us quite a while to salvage the boat, get it back to the dock. But I talked about this a bit, actually. For me, in a leadership position, I took a huge amount of strength from the way everyone reacted to that, because it would have been easy for everyone to just drop their heads and sort of start pointing fingers and run for the hills. And no, they didn't. We had a really good group of people. They knew what to do. They knew it wasn't great, but we had to sort it out. We had to figure it out, and we patched the boat back together in pretty quick order. About 6 weeks, got back out in the water, got testing, and that gave me a lot of strength. And then when we had, I talked about, we had a bit of a slow start to the Cup last summer in Barcelona, getting a fair bit of criticism, some justifiably so. But the team, again, didn't panic, didn't drop their shoulders, just knew that we had been in some tough spots before, and we just need to keep sticking to our processes. And we had a really good squad of people, and we came through it.
And you achieved something truly remarkable, winning the Louis Vuitton and making the final, the first British crew to do it in 90 years, which is an extraordinary achievement, Ben. Describe that sense of euphoria. You've come through the hardship, you've come through the setbacks, but you actually had a real chance to celebrate.
Well, yeah, that final of the Louis Vuitton Cup against Luna Rossa, I mean, I think that was probably the best racing of the whole America's Cup, and we had some incredible conditions there with the strong Garby sea breeze that came in Barcelona, and two really evenly matched boats, great sailing teams on both sides, and my old mate Jimmy Spithill being up against him is always good fun, and yeah, we managed to get them out on top of that one, which was great for the team. Really well deserved, massive team effort. But we couldn't really enjoy it because we were straight on to, what a great opportunity to be in an America's Cup final and trying to maximise the potential from that.
Did you ever get 5 minutes to yourself? Because you were running the team, you were running the boat, and there was extraordinary pressure on your shoulders. Did you ever get 5 minutes, just peace and quiet, or was it just utterly relentless?
It was pretty relentless. It was pretty full on period because, like you said, we were obviously had what was going on the water, but off the water, it was potentially even more challenging. To be honest, there's quite a bit going on, and so it was a tricky old time. But I had a great team around me. Georgie, my wife, and my family were down there, and huge support. So yeah, we relied on each other as a team, and we got through it. And obviously it was a shame to get to the final and not win more races against the Kiwis, but they were a class outfit, and they turned up with just a slightly better overall package.
And you talk about Georgie and the kids, and there's always that fine line I find when I'm lucky enough to speak to professional sports stars. They could be champions of whatever sport, but nothing really compares them for the moment when their 4-year-old comes up and says a one-liner which just cuts to the core. So how are you able to balance the professional side of your life with the personal?
Not very well, I think, is probably the answer. If you ask Georgie, but I try my best. I'm hugely fortunate that she and Fox and Bellatrix, our 2 kids, are really behind what I'm doing, and Georgie's got her own business going on and really doing some great things in her own right. So we make it work like any other family. But all families have got tight on time, and everyone's got busy work schedules and hectic schedules with the kids and all the rest of it. Just sort of make it work, but also I think great opportunity to be down in Barcelona, and for the kids and the youngsters that were down there as well to witness the America's Cup, and for those that were fortunate to get down there, the vibe down on the dock, and the moment when we were leaving the dock and all the horns were going and the flags were flying, and yeah, what a great atmosphere.
Yeah, really, really, really special. And then obviously, has time healed? It was obviously bitterly disappointing from your perspective, but we're 6 months on now? Has time healed in any way?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, you sort of learn from your losses, and certainly for sure we learned a lot from going up against the Kiwis in the final. It was a really good opportunity, and of course, we wish we could have pushed it harder, and ultimately we did. Like I said, they were just that slight edge in performance, particularly in the manoeuvres, and bloody hard to beat. So that's the focus now, is figuring out how we go to the next level. Every time we've competed, that was our 3rd cup. Each time we get one step closer to the mark. So I'm taking it by that rationale. If we keep going, then the next time we'll go all the way.
Because I think what fascinates everyone beyond sailing as well is the technology. It's the innovation and it's the science. And they've been described as Formula One cars on water, Ben. So in the 10 years that you've been part of this, how much in design terms have these boats really changed?
They've changed a lot. We talked about 2013 Cup. That was the first time we started getting these boats foiling. And in that Cup, we sort of realised, we could get them to foil downwind. And then about halfway through the actual America's Cup, we realised we could get them to foil upwind as well, which is a bit of a game changer. And then the Cup in Bermuda, it was all about, actually now we can get them to foil through attack. That's pretty good going. So what's next? And, it's just in progression. And then obviously after Bermuda, we switched from the multi-hulls to the monohulls. A whole new class of boat. And when you switch a class of boat in any sport, Formula One, you mentioned, you change the regs on the cars, then there's a massive design loop and focus. And, we were, the Kiwis and the Italians wrote the class rule for that America's Cup. So they really had a jump on the Americans and ourselves. And that kind of showed in the Cup in 21 in Auckland. But for the second iteration of the AC75, we were the challenge of records, so we were up to speed with the regs. We had the design partnership with Mercedes, which was really helpful in a lot of areas. and we were able to put together a really competitive technical package and boat, and then ultimately as sailors get out there and push that to the limit and beyond.
Unbelievable. So where do you think technologically you'll be at the next America's Cup? How different will those boats look?
That's a really good question. I think most probably they'll look quite similar. You know, at the moment it will be it looks like we'll stick with the same class of boat, and yeah, that's an evolution. So that'll be the third generation, and you know what it's like is any other class of boat. The more you get into it, the more you develop it, you're getting further into the design envelope. So I expect the racing to be tighter, and it'll be interesting to see if there are some changes with the setup of the racing. If we do more fleet racing, for example, you see fleet racing, those AC75s would be pretty amazing. And I think the key is that we keep moving the sports forward, and certainly I think Barcelona was one of the really top America's Cups we've had in recent times, and I look forward to a better cup next time round.
So we were all gripped here watching it. The speed though, Ben, I mean, my God, are you not terrified sometimes the way we were watching it, and it's just like a different world. And I'm just fascinated what it is like being on board, the headset on, the mind focused and sharp, and yet you are going at frightening speeds.
Yeah, it was really fascinating. This, people see this dual helm business that we had, and the communications around that are obviously a real challenge. But the scariest thing for me was realizing just what it's like when you're not steering one of these boats, because when you're steering it, you're kind of, you're focusing on that and you're in control. But when you're not steering it and you're relying, I had some sympathy for the rest of the crew that have been putting up with me for the last 10 years, hooning around in one of these things, having absolutely no idea just how close to the edge you are of wiping out. And they're really super exhilarating boats. To sail them fast, you have to really push them to the limit. And I think you saw that with the last cup, lots of wipeouts, the boats falling off the foils. And yeah, when you're doing close to 100 kilometers an hour and you come off the foil, yeah, it hurts. So it's a great technical and physical challenge.
And the crew on board, you have some of the most incredible physical specimens, don't you, in terms of the teammates you have with you, because sailing has almost brought in cycling as well, hasn't it? It's brought in other Olympic sports to drive the boat. So training-wise, what were you doing to get yourself match fit for the America's Cup?
Well, yeah, I can't say that I was necessarily as fit as the cyclors that we had on the boat, but they were doing a phenomenal job. I mean, some of the numbers for people that do a bit of cycling and focus on your power wattage, I mean, those numbers were really phenomenal. I mean, right up there with any pro cyclist. So they did a great job. For the rest of us who weren't on the bikes, it was more about just being agile, being down to weight, being mentally focused, and so we did different types of training for that. But yeah, it was a really good sailing squad that we had down in Barcelona. Obviously Dylan Fletcher did a great job coming in later on in the campaign, did a really brilliant job in helping me steer the boat. And we had Lee McMillan, who a lot of people might know from Sea View, as a local Isle of Wight lad, was on board the boat with us. And then obviously the cyclors and that's just the sailing part of it. We had 150 people down in Barcelona, so it's a massive team behind the sailing team in terms of preparing the boat, working on the setup of the boat, Marcoms, base operations, you name it, massive team effort.
And it's not going to be long before your team, your SailGP team, is actually going to be competing on the water behind us, 19th, 20th of July. And I know you're the CEO now running one of the SailGP teams in the Emirates GBR. So how does SailGP differ from the America's Cup?
Well, it really differs mainly. The boats are one design. I mean, they're cutting edge technology, but they're all exactly the same. And so when you turn up to an event, the league do a great job in helping prepare the boats. We have a small shore team that finish off the detailing on the boat, but it's logistically, it's a much easier exercise, and it's all about just getting these incredibly high performance boats out in the water and the top sailors in the world doing their thing and having some cracking racing.
And it looks exhilarating. What are those boats like to race on?
They're similar performance to the America's Cup boat. America's Cup boat's a bit better performance upwind, but I'd say they're scarier to be on because you're not as protected. And of course, you've got to run from side to side when you're manoeuvring because you need the weight for the righting moment on the multi-hulls. You're tethered onto the boat, so that certainly helps. But it's still it's pretty disconcerting at times when you're sort of running across a boat mid-air and it's doing sort of close to 100 kilometers an hour. You're definitely relying on your teammates at that point.
Absolutely. And you've become a huge advocate for sailing, Ben. I know the club and everyone here is extremely grateful for what you've done with Georgie coming here not so long ago to launch the Sea View Sailing Trust, which is doing tremendous work. Bringing sailing to children in primary schools. I think they've now developed it to spread to over 3,000 training days, which is an incredible achievement. And in your work with your charity as well, I'm just wondering how you see, in your role as a kind of a beacon really, to kind of spread the message of sailing, how much of a challenge is it to get people sailing who frankly wouldn't even think about doing it in the first place?
Yeah, it's really amazing when you look into it, and particularly when you said we started here on the island, it's about 8 years or so ago, and you think on the Isle of Wight that all of the local kids would be down on the beach and going out on boats, but sadly that's not the case. And so having the support to put something like this together, huge thanks to everyone. I know a lot of people here at the club have contributed and helped with that program. It's really important. We're obviously an island nation. We've got some amazing coastal towns and villages. And really getting the youngsters in those areas down to the local sailing clubs, giving them the opportunity to see what sailing's all about. We obviously all love it. That's why we're down here, and so giving those youngsters the access to the sport, I think, is really important. And we need to see more of it. I think around the country, it'd be great to see.
And we are all massive sailing fans here. We have children, grandchildren who sail, who try to sail. I've got 2 youngsters who are starting in oppies now. What would you tell youngsters who are going sailing for the first time? What would you tell your young 8-year-old self now, Ben, about taking on the sea, taking on the tide, taking on the wind?
I would say this is your opportunity to get away from your really annoying parents and siblings, and get some time on your own. I mean, I still remember the first. I'm sure you will do as well. First time I got on a boat on my own, and I grew up down in Cornwall, and my dad let me out on this Optimist, and just the sensation of being in charge of this boat on your own, no one telling you what to do, it was just brilliant. I loved it, and I think that's what the youngsters, when they get out there and they get that sensation, they really love it. And the other great thing, as you said earlier about the sport, is so diverse. There's so many different types of boats that you can sail. You want to go out on your own, or you want to go out and get involved with team sailing. It's just a fantastic sport. So the more we can encourage the youngsters out there and give them the opportunities, the better.
And how much do you think you've changed since you first started on that oppie aged 8?
Definitely got a few more grey hairs than I did back then. But no, I'm hugely lucky to have had a career in sailing and the opportunities that have been provided and the support that I've had from so many people along the way. And so for me, it's just been a privilege being involved with the sport. This transition from, displacement sailing to foiling sailing that we've seen in the last 10 years or so, to being a part of that transition has been, a real privilege. And I think it's a really exciting future for the sport now with these high-performance dinghies. We're talking about the youngsters in particular. They're so motivated when they see a foiling moth or a foiling SailGP boat or America's Cup boat. They can see themselves doing that, and that's really cool.
One final question before we open it to the floor. If any of you have got questions for Ben, we'll have that opportunity in a moment. I think it's a really important one to finish with. In August, between the 16th and 23rd, are you available to crew me in the Mermaid? Because I could really do with some help.
I'll have to check with the team. I'd love to, though. I've only done one race here in a Mermaid, and thank God I managed to win it. And that was it. I said I'm not racing again. That's it.
Ben, it'll be a different story with me, I can promise you that. Folks, the floor is yours for 5 minutes. If there are any questions you have for Ben, please raise your hands. He's gallant and brave enough to take them on. Raymond, shall we start with you?
Thank you for coming, guys. We've read a great deal about the desire of some challenger teams to change the focus of the INEOS Cup and change the format. Tell us what you can about that piece and where it's at.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a pretty hot topic at the moment. Right now we're in this critical phase with the challenger record teams. That means we're responsible really for collecting all of the ideas from the other challengers and then passing that on to the defender, with the Kiwis obviously in this scenario, and then trying to figure out what the rules and regulations look like for the next event. And I mentioned earlier the potential for fleet racing in these AC75, so I think there's a good chance that we could see that in the next America's Cup. And right now, it's about trying to encourage as many teams as we possibly can. There's always this battle with the regulations of trying to, the defender obviously wanting to protect their position, but at the same time, you need to have a fair competition, and that's really our job as a challenger of record to try and ensure that.
Thank you. Anyone else with a question for Ben? One at the back.
Yeah, I've got a good question for you. So, we always say a good day in the water is a bad day in the office, and you've probably got both at the same time. But what is the worst day you've had on the water, and what is the best?
Yeah, I've had a few. Probably that moment we talked about when we managed to capsize and set on fire and sink the test boat. That was definitely a pretty shit day, to be honest, and a few difficult calls to make when we got back to the dock as well. So yeah, that wasn't a good one. Best day, I've been really fortunate. Had some great moments. London 2012 was really special. Great opportunity to race on home waters, and just a brilliant crowd that we got down to Weymouth and Portland. That was very special.
Thank you. Any more for Ben down the front? Yeah.
I would say Sydney Harbour. Yeah, that's just an amazing place to sail. If any you've been fortunate to sail there, it's just a mecca for sailing in Australia. You go out on a weekend in Sydney, summer's weekend in Sydney Harbour, and it's just rammed with boats, but all sorts from big ocean going racing yachts to moths and lasers and oppies, and just brilliant to see so many boats out in the water. And then with SailGP, we've had some really wonderful racing there over the years.
Any more questions? One there. Yes. Go for it.
Do you find the Olympics hard?
Do you find the Olympics hard? Yeah, very hard. Very hard. Yeah, I went to 5 Olympics, and the first one I got a silver medal, and then I was really determined. Okay, I've got to go one better. I've got to try and get a gold medal, and then I managed to do that in the next Olympics I went to in Sydney. And Sydney comes up a lot when people talk about favourite sailing venues. But yeah, of the 5 Olympics I went to, 2 things went really well, and I managed to sail well, and then the other 3 were just an absolute, really hard. Went to the wire, managed to win 2 of those, got the silver in the other one. So the thing about the Olympics is the pressure, because it's only every 4 years. In sailing, you only get 1 representative per nation in the class of boat you sail, so just even qualifying is hard enough. And when you get there, you're never sure if you're going to get another opportunity. So it just piles a lot of pressure on people. And I have to say the best way to deal with that pressure is just to practice. And, there's a great saying that pressure is a privilege. And, the way around that is to practice and practice and practice, so that when you get to the race, you've done absolutely everything you can do, and it will be what it will be, and just focus on the racing and rely on all of the hard work that you put in.
Great question. A chance for one more over on the left. Tess.
Hiya. So a lot of us were very fortunate to come out to Barcelona and witness your dockouts, which were pretty phenomenal. They were fantastic. So I've got 2 questions. First one is, is the dockout as great as in SailGP? And the second question is obviously what happened in San Francisco with the Australian boat is probably a bit of a worry. How much involvement do you have in the sort of design of the sail to make sure that's not going to happen again?
Yeah, sure. Great question. So yeah, I mean, the dock out in Barcelona, you're right. That was just amazing. And it was by far and away the biggest dock out I've ever seen. And SailGP is a bit different. We don't really do the dock outs like that. So to have the amount of people that we did, the atmosphere and all of the horns on the yachts and the marina and the flags, I'd say so, it was really, really quite emotional for the team to see that level of support. On this SailGP with the wing, yeah, really unfortunate moment. I mean, those boats, as I said, they're one design, so they're designed and operated by the league. The league did a really thorough job to analyse what went wrong with that wing and found some issues that they've now rectified on all of the wings of the boats. We were supposed to be racing in Rio this coming week, and unfortunately had to cancel that event to make sure that the modifications and repairs were done to the whole fleet. That means now we can, we can be, certain that issue has been fixed, and the boats are going to be ready for racing in New York, which is going to be a really big event, probably one of the biggest events on the SailGP circuit. So looking forward to that one.
Thank you, Tess. Chance for one final question for anyone. We've got a few at the back. Chap there just in front of the arm race.
So you've obviously always been an amazing sailor. Have you always been a great learner? And how have you adapted yourself through the years to become a better learner?
Yeah, good question. I think you have to be in sport, really. You have to rely quite a lot on self-learning. I think for me, I was maybe in my mid-teens when I really figured that bit out. Until then, I was just so reliant on the coaches for, where should I go on the race course? How should I set my boat up? And then actually when you go for that process, I've got to kind of figure some of this stuff out for myself. That's when I really found that I was able to make some good jumps forwards. That's not to say that you then switch off from the coaches. You've got to take that advice from coaches, from your peers. I always think back in my career, wish I'd spent more time talking to people about the sport, not just coaches, but my competitors, and understanding really what, their strengths and weaknesses were more, because you can learn so much from that. And certainly having a really good squad to train with and practice race against makes a huge difference. And then, the more you go through, I think not just sport, but life in general, all of us, doesn't matter if you're in sport or just everyday life. I mean, we're all learning and developing. And I think the older you get, the more you realize just how, how critical it is to have a good mindset, good psychology, not just for yourself, but how you communicate with people around you, and certainly teamwork. I think that's one of the great things about sailing and team sailing, that it really helps you. Certainly me, because I was a real introvert as a kid. I was incredibly shy, and sailing and team sailing really forced me to figure some of those things out and try and learn how to communicate better. I'm sure I can still improve on that, but it's been a great opportunity for me, and I think for all of us, trying to each day think about how you can improve, how we can be better, both at work or at home or out in the water.
Thank you. And I think it was one last one at the back, just to finish with. Go for it, yeah.
Just wondering how much the America's Cup means to you. For example, would you trade your Olympic medals for America's Cup?
We saved the best question till last.
I'd trade all of them apart from the one in London. There you go.
Ben, thank you so much for your time this evening. The very best of luck with SailGP here in July, and the very best of luck going for the America's Cup, hoping to bring it home in 3 years' time. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Sir Ben Ainslie. Guy, if I could invite you up.
Thanks so much, James. What a great job, top quality. Thank you, James Burridge. Thank you. Ben, before you go, we've got two things. The first is we'd like to give you a gift as a way of saying thank you for coming today and for all of your contribution to British sailing. So we've got this wonderful print by world-renowned Shane Couch, and Shane specialises in America's Cup art. And indeed, this is a print from Sir Thomas Lipton. I think that's right, isn't it? Yeah. Shane
Thank you,
Couch,
Shane.
Ben
Thanks,
Ainslie.
Guy.
And then finally, the lot. Thank you. Right, let's put it somewhere so it doesn't break. And then Ben, on behalf of the Sea View Yacht Club, but all of the clubs on the island that are represented here today, just a very big thank you for coming and sharing that with us. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Guy. And like I said, it's really lovely to be back on the island, and great to see so many people here and enjoying the sailing club, the yacht club, and wishing you all the best for a very pleasant season ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.